So my colleague Dan will be at the end, and he'll have a mic with him. So if you want to ask your question, you can raise your hand and start asking those questions. Alrighty. So since speakers already got a chance to introduce themselves, how about we start with the panelists, if they can start introducing themselves one by one?
Wayne Edwards with PTC. I'm an augmented reality specialist.
Charlie Nigoy, SVP of Customer Success at LibraStream.
Hey, I'm Shannon with Augmenteer.
Dominic Galello, I'm with Symphony Industrial AI. We own a company called Proceedings.
Alrighty.
I'm Kavyesh Trivedi, work with Savannah River Nuclear Solutions. Great presentations. Just wanted to understand, like with all the virtual reality stuff that you have, one of the important issues we all deal with is data security. So how have you ensure that all your data is still managed properly and it's not falling in the wrong hands? If you can provide some opinions on that.
I can take one part of that. So a part of data security for ASK Chemicals, so we have a big presence within Europe, so we have to always be mindful of GDPR when we're using these tools. And that's been a challenge, obviously, because in other countries we don't have that added layer of protection that we have to consider. So when designing the solution, we have to really work hand in hand with legal to understand how do we present this tool to these users, like internal users even. So making sure that they opt in to actual video use. And if we're dealing with customers, we have to be mindful of the same thing. So it depends where you are in the world and making sure you're working with legal to ensure that you have those kind of pop-ups if you're using, augmented reality, live streaming, whatever it is, to ensure that they're actually opting into it. If you're in America, it's okay for the most part, but yeah, I just wanted to make mention of that. If you are doing this within certain countries, just work with your legal department, and if you have a workers' union.
Anybody else would like to add?
I would just say that a lot of IT departments, they'll certify devices, right? And so if you're working with standard devices, really tablets and wearables is like the thing of the future for sure. You can get a smartphone that's 40 kilograms today that you just strap on your wrist. IT departments already secured that. And then of course from the vendor side, we go through all the SOC 2 stuff, so very, very important. So there's both sides of it.
And a lot of these AR applications are already cloud-based. So at times, end users would like to go with cloud because they think that it's more secure than what they could have done in-house. Any other question?
I would disagree with that.
Oh, seriously?
We put a lot of our software on-prem because customers don't trust. And in fact, in Saudi Arabia, there is no such thing as cloud. Yeah. Right? It has
There's
to be
certain
on-prem.
regions, yeah.
So I would just respectfully disagree.
No. Anybody else?
This question is for Ron. You mentioned using the HoloLens for lockout tagout system. Is that just for a training routine, or is everybody that does lockout tagout dons the HoloLens and runs through that process?
We typically do it in the beginning for training, but once they become experienced, we actually still do it for validation. So they may then at that point take the tablet, but we still want the validation steps because that was part of the key sell is we were struggling to get audit compliance done properly. So we wanted to make sure that we could digitize our audit compliance. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Follow-up question to that. After you've done the validation, have you tried to possibly interlock that validation with the control environment that you're using PCS? In other words, inhibit the energy rating device if the procedure is not valid.
I guess we haven't quite gone that far. We were just glad to get the 100% validation at this point. But these are always an evolution. I mean, obviously, we're going to do more and more as more and more is available.
Essentially what I'm describing is the watchdog.
Right. Yeah, right. Doing the watchdog.
Digital watchdog.
Yeah. It will, if I don't validate that step, it will not allow me to move to the next step. So I can't complete the entire lockout tagout until I've validated that. Now, whether I've physically put in the PLC that I've de-energized and yes, that is done correctly, we're not there yet.
If I may react to that's a great question. But be careful.
Rob Price, BASF. Curious what you guys are doing for building out your networks. I mean, one of the cases for AR and one of the things we struggle with is, our facilities are pretty extensive, and trying to build Wi-Fi that covers an entire plant can be cost prohibitive. So I'm curious if you guys are using something other than Wi-Fi. What kind of network technologies are you using?
Offline. You have to be offline.
Yeah.
And whenever you find a spot that works, you upload. But so for our users, offline is essential.
Yeah, I can see that working, but not necessarily in an inspection use case or something like that.
Sure.
You're gonna have to. So you're only going to build your networks where you need them. Just trying to figure out how you cost justify the infrastructure in the ROI.
We do a little bit of that with some of our deployments have historically been in really constrained environments of network. So like just part of LeaderStream's origin story was our second customer was Baker Hughes. They were operating in the North Sea offshore rigs back in '06. So there was no broadband out there. They actually said, we've got 56K dial-up on the rig and you guys can't use it all. So we actually attacked it from the standpoint of building a protocol that could run sub 100 kilobits, doing live streaming, doing image capture, that sort of thing. As Dominic said, it's not magic, right? If there's nothing, you got to go in an offline mode. But the other alternative is how do you make it work with what you do have? And interestingly, we found that if you're really constrained, drop your video, keep your audio. Because there's actually more value, it sounds weird, but it's more value in audio than there's in video. We listen to the radio and podcasts. We don't watch TV with the sound off. So get more value out of the audio side.
Thanks. I got another one for you. OSHA recordables. I mean, now we're putting another device in people's hands. We're wearing one. Any safety concerns? How do you deal with the safety concerns? How do you get this past your safety departments?
So I'll say I dealt with that quite a bit in our manufacturing facilities where safety came in and said, hey, you got to quit having people walk around with tablets, right? And so one of the things that we do for tablets in particular is with the Samsung device, we can have where the screen blacks out if you're in motion. So only if you're standing still does the screen activate, right? So that's one thing we did. We use, instead of the HoloLens 2, in a lot of cases, we use the Trimble XR10, where the visor will flip up 180 degrees to get totally out of the field of view of the operator. So we've done a lot of these things. That's a great question because no matter what you do, someone's going to have an issue with it, right? But we've had to do a lot of navigating that because it is safety first in all of our companies, right? I think I can speak for everyone. That's super important. And so if safety doesn't approve what I'm doing, it doesn't happen, and we like it that way. So we do a lot of working around with the devices in particular, making sure that they're not obstructing view in hazardous conditions, for sure.
We do have a comment up front. You wanted to make a comment, sir?
I was responding to this gentleman's point of the more things that you layer, the more things that you attach to a lockout, tagout, to locking machines out, to be careful of what you implement, be careful of what power you give to the system as opposed to the operator himself. That there can be, it's a be careful what you wish for kind of thing. Who actually has the authority at the end of the day of locking that out?
Is there any question? Yeah, one question I wanted to ask technology providers, because you work with end users from various different industries. So when you talk to them, what kind of challenges you hear about more often?
So one of the things that we typically think about is a lot of times we have two constituencies. Right? We have our, what I'll call the corporate constituent, right, which is what everybody did a really good job of sharing today. It's sort of what is in it for the business? What's the ROI on that? What's achieved? And again, fantastic examples today. But the second constituency is the user, right? Because oftentimes they're the ones making the decision to use. And while they don't calculate an ROI with dollars, they do calculate an ROI for their investment. And their investment is the time they have to take to train, the time they have to learn to do something different, to do their job differently than they had. They, as individuals, as users, as workers, need to get something out of that. There has to be a return. What's in it for me if I do these things? How is it making me safer? How is it making me do less non-value added work? I do a 20-minute job, I do 20 minutes of paperwork. How do I make that a 20-minute job and 0 minutes of paperwork? You know, how does it make me look cool? You know, whatever it is, there's got to be a return. And so in our most successful customers have really satisfied both those constituencies. What's in it for the company? What's in it for the user? Without both, you really don't get that far.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think the frontline worker is probably a trip up, but you know, from an implementation standpoint that you can't necessarily predict. So, yeah, I think it's critically important. Yeah, and I think like some of these guys have talked about starting small. I think that is one way to kind of address that. And really, you're not going to get it right the first time, especially when it comes to frontline workers. So, a great point.
I think another thing too, I hear a lot, you know, where people are in the journey of this technology is the first question they're trying to answer is like, what could we do, right? And that's an important question early in the conversation, but I like to quickly get to what should we do, right? And that really relates to a lot of the conversation today around where is the value, what problems are we trying to solve. But the third and most important question I really like to really address is, can we do it? Can we be successful? And that we is the business side of the benefits as well as the user. So I really liked your comments regarding the user. I like to say, as a business, we want to improve the top and the bottom line. But you know, as a new employee for you, you just hired me. I want to do a good job. I want to be confident. I really want to do a good job. And I really like that about augmented reality. We are really addressing and enabling the people. And that's really exciting that when I walk into companies, I like to work with the people, say, hey, you can do this, right? And walk through that process. And I really think that is a good process. Don't forget about the frontline workers. Those are the folks that we are trying to enable. And those people primarily learn doing the job, not such in a classroom, right? So this is a really good technology for doing the job as well as learning the job.
And just to echo that, could is the most dangerous word.
Yes.
In this scenario. Like it's, you know, we can use it for this and use this. And it's kind of like, you know, who here bought a Peloton or any other piece of fitness equipment? Said, I could use this to get in shape. And now it's got laundry on it. Same kind of thing, right? It has to be, starting with that problem, starting with an area, whether it's starting small or very focused, not just sort of this pie in the sky, build it, buy it, and we'll come.
Don't be a solution instead of a problem, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Can I add that if you're going to embed this in your workflows, what's really important is, so I'm doing an inspection, I find an oil leak. I'm not qualified for that, so I have to be able to trigger another workflow to another department, and they have to be able to pick that up. So manufacturing is dynamic. You can't predict everything, and it really has to have all that logic, or else it's actually quite useless because you stop.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? If not, one piece of advice or one key takeaway. If all of you can contribute quickly, that would be very helpful.
My advice would be to not let perfection get in the way of progress, right? That's huge problem. Yeah.
I guess a key takeaway for me is make sure if you're going to do this, that you resource appropriately. If you think you're just going to hand it over to a process engineer with a full-time job and have them pick it up, you're probably not going to be successful.
a big thing for me in helping people really, understand, most people understand the problems they have and they see these capabilities around the future. They say, but what they don't really map it to is how do you do things today? I love to take a process today. How do we do it today? And let's go do that process here. That's a very simple way to kind of get from where are we to where we want to go. But so focus on how do you do it today? So a lot of times people ask me the question, how do you do that today? Now let's talk about how we would do that this way.
If we're going down the line. So I would say eliminate friction wherever you can. And that's friction in, because fundamentally we're asking people to do business differently as individuals and as companies. And any friction that exists, unfamiliarity with hardware, with software, with UX, any of that, it doesn't take a lot. A pebble in the road will throw this off track. So as many pebbles and other friction points that you can get out of the way, the better.
Yeah, so advice would be an MIT professor wrote a book called IT People Are From Venus, Business People Are From Mars. I could have gotten that mixed up, but you get the hint, right? Get somebody that actually has a foot in both, because your business isn't going to understand what in the heck you're doing. And if you have an IT person talking to them, they know a lot of terminology that is great, but the business might not understand what they're saying.
I jumped ahead.
Oh,
Scott.
It doesn't matter how cool we think this is, right? That frontline operator has got to find value in it, to Charlie's point. If they don't use it, we can be cool all the way to unemployment. So it's got to bring value.
Yeah, I would say that the start small, but start part and involve a cross-functional team, because what made us successful with our implementation of Proceedix was the cross-functional team, which had that IT and operations people in it and connected and understanding the business problem, and it had the shop floor workers involved, everybody in between as well. So that really gave that holistic implementation there to be successful.
It may sound strange because we started with glasses, but the future is not glasses. I'll leave it at that.
All righty. So we would like to thank all of our speakers and panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great session.